Hello and welcome. So, I wasn't going to make a video on Dos Oruguitas because I don't have a very good knowledge of Spanish, and Howard Ho made a video about this where he did bring in like a Spanish language expert to help him. So, I feel like his video covered a lot of things that I wouldn't really be able to speak to. But there are some musical things that we can still talk about, some of how things are structured and that type of thing. So this won't be as in-depth, this will just kind of be more like an overview. And I know that there's the two Oruguitas kind of translation of this, but I feel like the song works so well in Spanish, and that's how it's presented in the movie, that this is really the one that's kind of the Spanish version is the one that's worth talking about. So I'm not planning on doing a video on two Oruguitas. Now, if there's a lot of interest, if there are people who think like, oh, well, I really like the English version, I think it's under, represented and we need more people talking about it, I'll go ahead and take a look. But as of right now, like, this is my only plan for this song, is just to cover the Spanish version. So let's dive on in. My name is Dr. Zach. Grab a cup of tea and join me. All right, so I agree with genius lyrics kind of on everything here. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted to create kind of like this folk song kind of feeling, which I think translated into using a very straightforward structure with verse and chorus. Not to say that folk songs have straightforward structures, but like this is a structure that we're really used to nowadays and that you can find in folk songs. And so that's why I think we have just kind of verse chorus in a very typical fashion in this song. So first off, we do have an instrumental introduction to this song that is part of the soundtrack. Like I mentioned in We Don't Talk About Bruno, there's a bit of an instrumental introduction in the movie, but in the actual soundtrack, it just starts right on We Don't Talk About Bruno. So this is the first time that we've had like a dedicated instrumental introduction in the soundtrack. So that's something that also kind of differentiates this song from the other songs, but it's also following the trend of having some sort of introduction. We Don't Talk About Bruno is really the only song so far that hasn't had an introduction. It's just started right on that hook and taken off from there. All the other songs, like with Luisa's, I'm the strong one, I'm not nervous, like those lines don't really come back. Those like melodies don't really come back. It's more of that like introduction to the song, right? And here we get an instrumental introduction. And then we have just verse 1. The verse is kind of split into two parts, I think. We have this first part, and then we have these like repeated words, right? Like we have mundo and cambiando and cambiando. Again, like I said, I'm not a Spanish language expert. I actually have studied French instead of Spanish. So if I mispronounce some of these words, I apologize in advance. All right, and notably, we have an exact repeat of the line here at the end. So this is what I'm saying. I feel like the verses are kind of split into two because this pattern continues in the next verse. We have an exact repeat of a line, then we get to the chorus. Now, the chorus breaks this pattern, right? We've talked a lot about how Lin-Manuel Miranda sets up patterns that then we can latch onto, right? The verses had this consistent pattern, and then the chorus is now breaking that pattern, so we know we get something different. And this is also just like, as a composer, this is what you should be doing. You should be like consistent so you can really understand like what's happening in the piece, and you can then also break what you've set people up to expect, which we'll get to in actually verse 3. Lin-Manuel Miranda breaks this pattern he's established. So in the chorus, we just get it twice through the whole way, pretty straightforward. And I'm not sure about all the rhyme schemes and everything because of how things are pronounced, and I feel like Howard Ho does a good job interpreting the lyrics in his video. So just there's a link in the description to his video, so go and check that out. The one interesting thing I think is this bridge, which I have labeled as a vocal interlude. So actually this part here where they're going whoa, oh, 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 and it's all these O's. It is not in the lyrics that pop up when you first search for the song, but on Genius Lyrics, they included it and called it a bridge. And I think it's more like a vocal interlude. I kind of felt like, you know, how sometimes songs have instrumental interludes or instrumental parts. That's what I felt like here, but it was with voices instead of instruments, which, of course, the voice is an instrument, but just to be clear about what we're talking about, whether it's like a singing instrument or not, I'm just going to use voice and instruments. So we have this little vocal interlude, and why I don't think it's a bridge is because the bridge, I feel like, usually has lyrics, right? We usually have something. It's usually the part of the song where we get something a little bit different. Now, this is the right place for a bridge, so I could see why you might call it a bridge. But to me, I feel like it just has that more of a vocal interlude quality, and also something that would differentiate a bridge from, you know, this interlude is the bridge doesn't usually get meshed together with the chorus at the end, which is what happens with this vocal interlude, and we'll talk about in a second. So then verse 3, we broke the pattern. So instead of having the exact same lines like in verse 1 and verse 2, now we have all kind of original lines throughout this. So we don't get any exact repeats until this Nuestro Milagro line. And then to kind of compensate for the fact that we haven't had those exact repeated lines, we get Nuestro Milagro 4 times in a row total, right? So that's the pattern, right? We broke the pattern, but we kind of still are hinting to the pattern by repeating some words exactly over and over again. So this provides a little bit of variety to the piece while still not doing something that's so completely different that it's like, where did this idea come from? We still see the repeated words, but they're just happening in a different kind of way. And then we get the last 3 iterations of the chorus here. So I mentioned about that bridge coming back. Well, what's cool about this chorus is it isn't just the same thing 3 times. There are different elements that kind of start adding in or changing as the chorus goes along. Now, having like a chorus 3 times at the end of the song isn't totally strange. Like, it is something that happens, but I feel like a lot of times people don't take like a lot of liberties to change things here at the end. So like the singer is changing the notes that he's singing while, you know, going through all of these different repetitions of the chorus. But in addition, we get kind of a standard instrumentation in this chorus. In fact, I think it's the exact instrumentation that we get in this part of the chorus. So we've had guitar going through, and then we have the chorus again with guitar, but some drums start coming in, and then we get kind of a fuller instrumentation when we get the repeat of the chorus that first time. And then when we come back to the chorus, we have that same sort of instrumentation as that first repetition that we had. So we're kind of tying those 2 things together. So this chorus shares something with the last chorus that we remember hearing, right? So that's kind of a nice tie-in. And then when we get to the second time we hear the chorus at the end, we start to hear some O's, but they are not like the O's from the bridge. They're a little bit different. It's a brand new kind of melody, but using a vowel or sound that we've already heard in this song, right? So we're kind of tying it in. And then in the third time we hear the chorus, the O's from the bridge are exactly the same. They are presented in the exact same way, maybe with a few like slight differences, but when I listened to it, I thought it sounded exactly like the bridge. So then we have this cool way of incorporating that vocal interlude, right? Not a bridge like Genius was saying, but actually that vocal interlude into the final chorus. So we get kind of a hint of it in the second to last chorus, and then we get the full realization of it in the last chorus. So see, even though like the structure is pretty straightforward, verse 1, verse 2, chorus 2 times in a row, verse 3, chorus 3 times in a row at the end, there's always something kind of happening here, right? There's always something kind of intentional happening. We established the patterns in verse 1 and 2 of what to expect from a verse, right? Which are these exact kind of repeating lines at the end. Okay, I heard that line repeat exactly must mean that we're at the end of the verse. Then we get the chorus, right? And we add some instruments to make even the repetition of the chorus a little bit different. And then we get that nice little vocal interlude, which will then be reused at the end. And we get verse 3, which breaks the pattern, but still kind of calls back to it with this Nuestro Milagro line. It was right. And then when we get to the final section where we just have the chorus 3 times in a row, you would be able to tell which one of these you're listening to just by the instruments. Now, I think between the first time we hear this chorus at the end and where that kind of ties back into the second chorus before this, those would be tough to tell apart. I think the instrumentation is very similar between those two, with the reasoning being that like we're tying back to that last chorus that we heard, right? So we need to like start somewhere. But then for these other 2 choruses at the end, we can tell based on the O's which one we're in. Does it match the interlude? If so, we're in the last chorus. And if the O's don't match the interlude, we're into the second to last chorus. So real nice way of introducing musical elements and then reusing them in different ways to signal kind of different things, right? And also nice way of setting up the expectation that we had with the verses and then breaking it, but not going so far that we don't really have an understanding of where that idea came from. So that's all for today. Like I said, I just want to do more of an overview of this piece. I try to always do like what can be improved, but I feel like I might just misinterpret or misunderstand some of what's going on in this song because of the Spanish. So I think like it works really well. The only thing that I could maybe suggest is like the repetitions, 3 repetitions of the chorus at the end is a lot, but that is managed by the techniques that I mentioned in the video, by, reintroducing the vocal interlude and the singer changing how he's singing the melody throughout all of those. More of like, feels like he's kind of riffing in a way on the melody, which is really fun to listen to. So that many repetitions isn't a problem. But that's something that maybe you could think about if you wanted to like have this big conclusion by having 3 choruses at the end. How are you going to make each of those choruses a little bit different? How could you incorporate something that came before into your choruses to, add that variety and keep that interest at the end, rather than just like exactly doing the chorus 3 times at the end? So yeah, that'll be all for today. Thank you all for watching. If you have some time, I'd appreciate if you could check out my Patreon. I appreciate all of your support, and I will see you next time.